All right, board members, we are called into order. Currently, we have 6 of our 7 members. Dr. McKnight's not with us yet. The executive staff, as well as Attorney Dubison, is joining virtually. Attorney, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll begin today's meeting with the invocation by Ms. LeBrec.
Let us pray. Gracious God, we thank you for this opportunity to meet and serve our community. We ask for your wisdom and guidance as we hear information brought before us. Please help us to be innovative as we brainstorm more solutions and continue to ask questions. Also, help us to be unified in making the best possible decisions for everyone across the county. This we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Ms. Williams, will you lead us in our pledge?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Work session with going into closed session first. So we'd like to take a motion that we adjourn to closed session in accordance with North Carolina General Statute 143, 318, 11A, 1 and 6, 115C, 321 for personnel and attorney-client privilege. Do we have someone willing? All right, board members, we're back in open session now, and we are on our live stream. And so this brings us up to our first section tonight of Policy 3.01. We have a presentation for you, and this will be considered action related to COVID-19 and athletics. And so, Dr. McClain, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Chair. At this time, she's getting set up. I'll be asking Ms. Curtis.
The pandemic princess is what we dubbed her at the retreat.
I thought it was queen.
She's certainly.
Oh,
Have I
sorry.
been demoted?
Sorry. No, yeah, you be queen.
She'll be sharing with us at this time. And the reason we're bringing this forth, I know we don't typically like to have action items at work sessions, but our students are currently engaged in athletics at this time. And so it is important we receive some direction for sports and activities on the athletic field. So we needed to bring this to you all at this time. So our apologies for needing to do this, but we do need some direction. So Ms. Curtis.
Thank you, Dr. McClain, and thank you, board members. When you met a few weeks ago, we had not yet received any guidance from the North Carolina High School Athletic Association, and so you approved in in our recommendation, you approved for us to follow the existing guidance that we had from May of 2021. We have now since received some additional guidance, and we want to share that with you today. Next slide. So just as a look back at the end of the 2021 school year, cloth face coverings were required for all athletes, coaches, and spectators at all time during indoor athletic activities. During outdoor activities, cloth face coverings were required for those athletes that were not actively participating in the game or practice. So this year we received 3 documents to assist us with planning for athletics. One is the Strong Schools NC Public Health Toolkit, which you're familiar with. Embedded within that was the interim guidance for administrators and participants of youth and amateur sports program. That was also created by the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. And then finally, we received some brief guidance from the North Carolina High School Athletic Association for best practices for sports. Next slide. So what does Strong Schools say about masking? While it does not specifically reference athletics, there is some guidance regarding the outdoors and masking in Strong Schools. And it says, in general, people do not need to wear masks when outdoors. However, particularly in areas of substantial to high transmission, the CDC recommends that people who are not fully vaccinated wear a mask in crowded outdoor settings or during activities that involve sustained close contact with other people who are not fully vaccinated. So as you know, we are in substantial or high community spread here in Granville County right now. Next slide. This is, in fact, the entire state of North Carolina. We have 2 counties that are not in high community spread at this time. And we do have our vaccination rates among our students that are eligible are not where we would like them to be at this time. Next slide. So the next document was the interim guidance for administrators and participants of youth and amateur sports programs. So this is also from DHHS, and it says there are some things you should keep in mind when making decisions about COVID safety guidelines for athletics. The physical proximity and prolonged closeness of players, the setting, indoor or outdoor, the intensity of the activity. So for instance, something like football is much more intense than golf. Team size, a cross-country team is much more likely to be smaller than again, a football team. Age and behavior of the players. So are they going to follow some guidelines about masking, distancing, et cetera. Level of community spread, and the vaccination status of participants. In terms of masking, they said, regardless of the type of sport being played, all administrators of sports programs and in other settings are strongly recommended to have all coaches, athletes, spectators, and other participants wear a face covering indoors if they are in a county of high or substantial levels of transmission, unless they state that an exception applies. And again, we are in high community spread here in Granville County at this time. Next slide. So the guidelines from the North Carolina High School Athletic Association say the exact same thing about masking indoors. They did not give a recommendation about outdoors. Next slide. The other guidance that the North Carolina High School Athletic Association provides, some other best practices. You know, I was a coach. I used to get in children's faces and tell them exactly what I wanted. We don't need to do that right now. Being sure to disinfect shared equipment. Consider working out in small groups or pods when possible to limit exposure if someone does become sick. Not sharing water bottles. Scheduling contests to include buffer times in between to allow the facility to air out and allow limited interaction between folks. Providing disposable cups and avoiding using things like water troughs and that kind of thing where students may be able to spread COVID more readily. And then finally have coaches, athletes, and other participants sit on the bench or if they're in the sideline area, stay 3 feet apart from each other in order to maintain physical distancing. So those are the rest of the recommendations that are not related to masking. Next slide. We did look at what was happening in our neighboring districts. So we looked at 4 other districts around us that had established a policy so far. 2 counties were requiring masks indoors for all students, coaches, and spectators, and outdoors requiring masks when students were not requiring a mask when students were actively involved in the activity, but requiring it when students were not actively involved in an activity or sitting on the bench or sidelines. And then 2 counties were required indoors and optional outdoors for all students, coaches, and spectators. Next slide. So our recommendation for you this afternoon is based on the guidance we received from all 3 sources. So our recommendation for indoors is that the mask be required for all students, coaches, and spectators. And that's in alignment with what we're doing indoors in our school buildings anyway. And then outdoors, no mask is required when students are actively involved with an activity, but a mask is required for students and coaches when not actively involved in an activity or on the bench or sidelines. We're also recommending that spectators wear a mask in all commons areas where crowds may gather at our outdoor facilities. These include concession stand and ticket booth areas when arriving at the contest, and spectators are allowed to remove their mask while seated and physically distanced. Finally, we recommend that we adopt the other guidance from the North Carolina High School Athletic Association. That was on that orange chart regarding physical distancing, cleaning and disinfecting shared equipment, hand sanitizer, water bottles, and hydration stations, communication, workout groups, and scheduling. So that is our recommendation to you this afternoon for athletics in Granville County as we move forward this fall.
Thank you, Ms. Curtis. Board members, what questions do you have for Ms. Curtis? Ms. LeBret?
Well, I have a slight concern with requiring masks when someone's not actively involved, especially because of the heat that's been going on with the humidity and everything else. I mean, so if a student's been running around, you know, and they're already heated up, and then they come off the sidelines, I mean, you know, especially during a football game or something, they might be off the sidelines for a good 30 seconds or, you know, a little bit less than that or more than that, depending on what's happening with the game. And I just think that to have them come off the field and to have them immediately put on a mask when it's already so hot and so hard to breathe in the humidity that we've got is, I don't know, I think that's, I mean, I think it should be optional anyways, but I mean, if we're going to require masks, I think that it needs to be especially, I mean, that's just really concerning to me, because what I don't want to see happen is, you know, we're all obsessed about COVID, and then all of a sudden, we've got people who are having heat exhaustion and heat stroke because we're requiring the masks, and that's, I feel like right now that's more of, that's a real issue.
Now, just my comment with regards to that, I guess I'm a little, just going back looking at the slide that you had with regards to this. Now, you're saying if he just came off the field from actively and he was over on the side, I guess while someone else go in or whatever.
Miss Anderson, will you get a little bit closer to your mic?
Yes, okay. I guess I'm trying to follow this comment with regards to the mask, because you're saying when the students are actively involved with an activity, no mask. But then for students and coaches, when not actively involved in an activity or on the bench, the mask is required. So a football player coming over to the side while they're playing another session there, but it's going to be going back out, seemed like to me that's where the no mask versus sitting on the bench knowing you're not going in for another, you know, session or whatever. You understand what I'm saying? I see football, and when these guys run over to the side when they're getting ready to make some other plays, I don't see where they would need to put the mask on. I'm looking at if they were sitting on the bench, all of those is not actively playing and they're on the bench. I didn't think that would apply to someone running off for another play to go on and then running back on. You know what I'm saying?
Ms. Curtis, can you speak to that, or?
So it says, when not actively involved in an activity or on the bench or sidelines. So,
So one coming off, so one running off the field because of a play, then they just finished that. He still is actively involved. I can't see that being considered he's now not, and you got to put your mask on. Am I understanding the sport correctly? Maybe
I think that,
I'm
you
looking
know,
at football.
when your involvement is done, that you put your mask back on, but it would not be while you were still on the field.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
can I just say that I think we are looking at being consistent in what coaches have to do. If you're talking about football, you got 5 players that just came out of the game and they're going back in a 30 seconds or a play or two, and you got to decide, you got to look at his bench and say, you need a mask and you don't. I think the consistency in what we are talking about doing makes a real difference in players using what you give them. Because they're going to use the system that you give them. And if you say, if you just come out of the game, you don't, and if you haven't been in the game, you do, I would hate to be the coach. You have to take that into consideration.
We almost have to have a whole nother coach to monitor the sideline now.
Yeah, I feel like for outside, especially for outside sports and with the heat that we have and everything else, I mean, parents are going to know what their kids can and can't handle, and they know their situations better than we do. And I feel like to make masks optional outside, especially for this, is, I mean, I just think making it optional is the way to go. I mean, I don't see why that wouldn't be good.
Ms. Curtis, what kind of mask are we letting, like, football and soccer players use?
It's the same kind of mask that is as asked at any time. So it's a cloth face covering. It could be a disposable one, like a surgical face mask. It could be, you know, a cloth one like I'm wearing. It depends on what the comfort level is of the student. But you know, it's a cloth face covering.
Gotcha.
I would say again that the reason that that's in the recommendation is because the CDC has said when you're in close proximity for a prolonged period of time with others that are unvaccinated, that it's recommended that you wear that mask. And we don't have a high level of vaccination among our players at this time. We have had some positive cases on our sports teams already, even though we have not started official competition. Thankfully, because they have been properly distanced during workouts, we have not had any quarantines related to our sports teams yet. But once competition starts, they'll be in much closer quarters, and that's definitely something that we need to think ahead about.
Ms. Williams?
Ms. Curtis?
Yes, ma'am.
Are we saying on the sidelines, are they not socially distancing, staying 3 feet apart?
We did, part of the recommendation is that we adopt the recommendation regarding physical distancing, which is at least 3 feet on the
I
sidelines.
don't remember too much about, I don't watch a lot of football, but when I was in band, I used to watch it, learned a little bit about it, but how much are they actually on the sidelines?
Depends,
Are
I
they
guess,
not
but-
on the bench
It
if
dep-
they're not actively involved?
Well, I think
Depends on how
sometimes
much
they're
training you've
standing up on the sideline, and
Yeah.
sometimes they're sitting on the bench. But when they're not in the game, we are recommending they be at least 3 feet apart, whether that be standing on the sideline or sitting on the bench. That is part of that layered mitigation strategy. You have some protection if you're masking, you have some protection if you're distancing, you have the most protection when you're doing both. It's those layers, right? So we have more protection when we are making sure we clean and disinfect our shared equipment. More protection when we make sure that we're not sharing water bottles and water troughs. All of that adds up to the greatest level of protection. So if you take a layer away, you're eliminating one of those layers of protection.
Dr. O'Leary?
Yeah, it seems to me that we may be over analyzing this. I think we just need to use some good common sense. Kids don't need to be wearing masks when they're actively involved, absolutely. When students come off, they've been playing and they're hot and they're breathing hard, and it should be optional there. And the coaches and principals should sit down and figure out what they think within the realm of this to what they think is a good common sense approach. I can think of a number of times when I sure would have hated to wear a mask if after or working out or doing something or whatever. Good common sense.
May I make a motion that masks are optional outdoors?
So the entire recommendation with the change of masks are optional outdoors for everyone?
Yes.
Is that what I'm understanding? All right, so we have a motion on the floor so basically your motion is to make masks mandatory indoors, nothing outdoors.
Well, I would love to see masks be optional all over the place. However, at this point, I'm going to say masks optional outdoors, and then as one motion,
Okay,
What about on the bench?
including on the bench, yes.
okay, so at this point, the motion on the floor is to make mask optional outdoors. Following the rest of the recommendation, we have a motion by Ms. LeBrecq. Do we have a second? Okay, no second, and that motion fails. All right, do we have another motion?
I'll make a motion that no mask is required outside when students are actively involved, and that coaches and principals will work with students for the option of when they need to be wearing a mask and when they don't.
So essentially, the staff's recommendation with adding the caveat, coaches and principals would work with them for that to be an appropriate time? Okay. Is that clear to everyone? No?
Would you repeat?
May
the
I
motion?
try to
Yes,
clarify?
ma'am.
Is the idea that masks will be required when not actively involved, and coaches and principals will define exactly what that means? As far as, does that mean I'm sitting on the bench? What if I'm waiting to sub in? That you feel that the board doesn't need to get involved in that level of detail about it?
Is that what you're saying, Dr. Land?
Oh, I'm saying that there should be some leeway with wearing masks when players come off the field. and our HOD, whatever. I mean, there should be some common sense leeway for coaches and principals to be able to make a decision as necessary. Now, kids sitting on the bench who are never going in the game, that's a different story. But we're recognizing the need for students to be able to have the option based on what's going on physically and whether or not they're going right back in and things of that.
So you're deferring that decision to the coaches and principal, not the board, which is kind of what Eva was saying?
I guess.
May I ask a clarifying question, Attorney Dubison?
Sure.
In that the home team determines the realm of control of the game for the visiting team, how would this be stated?
I think that we would say masks are required when not actively engaged in the activity. Because I understand that to be the underlying rule. And that the caveat was that there be some flexibility for coaches to, determine safety, I guess. But that in general, masks would be required when not actively engaging in the sport. If I'm understanding. Now, again, this is just trying to restate the motion.
That's the clearest it's been.
Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney.
Is everybody?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I know we're talking about football, but this would apply to all sports, basketball, soccer, whatever.
Well, so the caveat is just for outdoor, so soccer, cross-country,
Right.
football for right now.
Right.
Okay? So you've heard the motion. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Could you restate what that motion is again?
Hey,
Just to make
attorney,
sure
can
we're
you,
clear.
Ms. Dubison, can you restate that motion?
The motion, as I understand it, is to accept the staff recommendation with the understanding that, accept the staff recommendation that masks be required indoors and outdoors, that they not be required when actively engaging in the sport. And that staff would have some leeway to determine what level of active engagement is safe to wear your mask or take it off.
Is leeway a legal term? All right.
No.
Too complicated.
All right, so essentially, if I'm rephrasing this correctly, that we're going to take the staff recommendation with the caveat of saying that depending on the circumstance, a coach will determine what is actively involved and what is not actively involved. Kind of to answer Ms. Anderson's previous question was, if you're coming off and going right back in, then you're actively involved, basically. Does that sound good, Dr. Houlihan? Okay. All right, so do we have a second for that?
Second.
All right. Do we have further, so we have a motion by Dr. Houlihan, a second by Ms. Anderson. Do we have any further discussion?
I guess where my I'm kind of concerned where, what I don't want to see happen is where a student feels like they need to have their mask off, and I don't want to see somebody coming over and telling them, you need to get it back on, and they legitimately, they need it off. And I'm just concerned. Like, I just feel like we're really splitting hairs where it's
Well, I would feel that's where we give our coaches the grace of knowing right and wrong. At least that's my opinion. You have something, okay. Any other further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Curtis.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson.
All right. Next, we move on to 3.02, our discussion for consolidation work. Board, this is coming to you tonight for two purposes. A board member had asked us to review the decision for the Tar River study that was approved at the last board meeting that we had at South Granville High School. And so along with reviewing that decision, we would also, if there's any kind of other discussion needs to happen there. Just to remind you, the motion was made at South Granville to complete the study for Tar River and closing Tar River, moving GC Hawley Middle School campus to that campus after a renovation, and that we would appoint a commission that would look at potential uses for the GC Hawley campus, keeping the name on that campus, the older campus. And so that is being studied by the staff. That is due to come to us September 12th at our board meeting. And so I'm going to give Ms. Anderson an opportunity to speak to that because she raised the concern. She was part of the affirmative group in that. And so we wanted to give her the opportunity after her concern was raised. So Ms. Anderson?
Yes, I did vote with my comrade there for the Tar River study to be accomplished. And as you all know, we have been going through study after study after study. Now, I haven't gone through quite as many. I'm fairly new, but I know I've been reading studies taken 2 or 3 years ago, and we just continue to put another study on the table as we hesitate to make a decision with regards to school consolidations. Now, we could, we've done the Creed more, we've done a lot of studies, and you all are fairly familiar with all of the studies that we've gone through. And as we get the results of the study, and these studies are, not, they're not free, we're having to pay for the studies. When we get those results back, then we're seem like we're back again at square one again, and here we go again. So I would not, so with me initially voting at the last session to do this Tar River study, having already seen several, I'm not going to expect to see much except some of the things I've seen before. I was just saying, hey, we can continue to do studies for the next year or two or whatever as we continue to not make a decision, but it's time for us to move forward. It is really time for us to go ahead and make those hard decisions so that our community will know what they are. It's not fair to the community, and I've seen that already being said, here you go again, here we go with another study, and no one's wanting to make a decision. And we have to make a decision as a board, as hard as it may be. We cannot please everyone. And, we just have to do that so that we can, I guess you could say, get on with it, because once we make a decision and go ahead and do what we need to do in keeping our, young folks, our school system, and our young kids at hand, our focal point, then they can go ahead and know, and we can go ahead and sort of see where we're going from here. And we can build this thing and then make this a better school system in Granville County and start bringing some of our students back to the public school system and not continuously creating charter schools and pulling them out of the school system. So we have to make some decisions. So with that, that's why, although I voted for another study for TAR, I am ready to pull that back and say, look, let's make these tough decisions here. That's what we were appointed to do. And we can't please everybody. We're never going to please everybody. But, we're going to have to do something. So, okay. And I did send that concern to you as the chair, and copied the rest of my board members as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So in receiving that request, I had engaged the attorney to explain to us what options were available to us at this point, if there was anything to be done. Attorney Dubison, can you speak to that now?
So as far as the vote to move forward with a study of closing Tar River, the board can rescind or amend that action. It would be a motion to rescind the prior action or to amend it, to change it in some way. And that, under your policy, just requires a majority. I will note that, you know, if you would, the one thing that would be limited is the option of closing Tar River, because you do have to do a study in a public hearing. So you can't cancel the study and then just go ahead and vote to close Tar River. You do have to go through the full process. So if you want to withdraw that study, which is fine, you would be limited to the options on which you have held a public hearing.
Okay. All right, so at this point, board members, just so that we can follow kind of the procedure we've done with other things, if there's a motion to put on the floor, that's fine, or do you need to have some questions confirmed by Ms. Anderson because of her request? What would be your pleasure?
I would like to make a statement basically before.
Yes, yes, sir.
That's concerning that. Because, you know, we met, we've been doing this for a couple of months in relationship to a motion. I think the first motion was made back during the June meeting, and this is just August. So in terms of it being a long time to make a decision like this, I don't see that as being a long time to do that. Of course, we've been talking about this for a couple of years, but in terms of precisely making a motion to do things, there were like 3 motions made at the last meeting that we had, and it talked about 3 different things, really. And one was doing the study on Tar River. The other 2 had to do with closing high schools and moving middle school into high schools. So I don't see that we are at a point where it's been such a long time since we've been going down this path that we have to all of a sudden stop doing what we're doing. That's my concern.
Other comments or questions?
And I would like to just mention, and you said it correctly, Mr. Peace, with regards to, you know, a couple of months that we've done this, but you also said also, you know, it's been 2 or 3 years that we've had things on the, you know, basically out there for studies. Creedmoor, Wilton, you know, South Granville to consolidate with, you know, Granville Central, Holly to move to 1, 2, or 3. It's just, you know, it's just back and forth and back and forth. You know, if I were to try to lay out how many different ways I could skin this cat, I tell you, I could lay out ways to skin this cat for another year or 2, really. When you are talking about all of the elementary schools, you know, the middle schools and the high schools, and we can do a combination like that for the next couple of years. If that's what you all want, but I don't think that's what the public want. They say make a decision so we can get on with it. You know, really, you're not gonna like everybody's decision, but you have to stop somewhere. Because I could really lay out every elementary school we have, and we can do studies for the next 2 or 3 years and see what we can do there, but we have to make a decision at some point. So yes, you know, and I did your second on this for Tar River, and then, you know, go back again and think about it and say, hey, you know, here we go again. So,
Well,
I understand.
Ms. Anderson, actually, my concern goes back a long way, because when we started down this road, we were talking about the problem that we were having with all these vacant classrooms in elementary schools. And we started talking about that, like I said, few years ago. And we've come a long way in terms of trying to figure out what's the best remedy to fix that. Well, the remedy really would be to close all the charters and bring them back. but that's not gonna happen. So, in looking at what's next, that will be the least disruptive, because the more disruptive we have within our system, in my mind, the more people will continue to leave the system. And I'm thinking that if we can do a couple of things. One would be to not have as many vacant classrooms in the elementaries, and the other would be to close Hawley, because the commissioners told us loud and clear they weren't going to fund us to $30-some million to do what needs to be done there. And that's a whole nother story, but and I won't get into that. But the idea that we have to, everybody on this board agree to, we need to do something with Hawley. And that do something means moving the children out. And you know, we talked about doing a renovation, and there was a $4 million talk about, but, and you know, I've done construction for about 50 years, and I've been down there and looked at it, and I've determined that we can move kids in there for a couple of million or less, because all that, you know, it's not a lot of difference between taking a 6th, 7th, 8th grade in a building that 5th graders is in and a couple of 4. I know there are going to need to be some changes basically to the pre-K and kindergarten classrooms. But the point is, I think if we, if looking at what we've done in the past, I've talked about it in the past, and we've talked about closing Wilson, we've talked about closing Creekmore, and we've gotten a lot of community input about those things, especially Wilson and the program that they have there. And what I'm proposing to do, only close one elementary school, takes care of Hawley, and of course it leaves room for the elementary schools to grow, or if a couple of years down the road we continue to lose students, you can always close another one. I'm primarily talking about not being as disruptive to the system or the students and parents within the system as can be. That's sort of where I am with this. And I appreciate your concern, and I hope we all have that same concern, that we are doing what's best for the children, even though it might take a week or two, a month or two longer to get there.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I fully understand, and I heard my you know, community when we talk about disruption, and no matter which way we go, there will be some disruption. We're saying make it as minimal as possible. So when you say as minimal as possible, we're saying possibly Tar River, because that could possibly be as minimal as possible, where we had on the table at the last session when we had the community coming in saying no to Wilton, no to Wilton, no to Creedmoor, no to Creedmoor. If it's no to Tar River, as minimal as possible disruption. There will be some disruption. Everybody is not going to be happy. There will be some disruption. So I understand.
Ms. Williams? Oh, I thought you were going to say something.
I'll raise my hand. I think all of us will be at the point where we will be glad to make a decision. However, I understand the concept of it's been talked about for a year or two, but as far as my involvement with it, it's only been a few months, so I guess it's probably a little more tiresome for some. But my concern is this: whatever we do, it's going to affect our communities and our children, not for a year or two. It could have implications for 10 or 15 years when we start closing schools, when we start selling this, or changing that. So my personal feeling here, and I just really feel strongly that we need to just complete the study. It's not one that's going to cost money at this point. Am I correct on that?
It's costing
just
staff
finishing
time.
up, doing the same things we did with Creedmoor and Wilton. Is
Yeah,
that
what,
correct?
we,
So
we've
it's not an
spent,
architectural thing.
we've
at this
spent the
point.
money on the architectural study already.
Yeah, we've had that.
Now this is staff time for that.
Yeah, staff time. So I would just like to say, I think we need to, even if we consider other options today, I think we need to let that play out. And then we won't ever say, well, really wish we'd have looked at that. Because if you look at the map of our county, that would put basically Butner STEM and the Holly kids, if they went, say, to South Granville, that would put two fairly close together. And where a lot of the growth is actually in that Wilton area. And there are a lot of subdivisions down there. That map's old. It doesn't even show some of the roads down there that I'm familiar with. So I don't know. I just hate to see us bunch it up and then not do what we can to give these kids a middle school. There may be other options, but I'd like to at least let that go and run its course, and let's see what the study says. That's my opinion.
All right, Dr. William.
Yeah. We're down this course. We've got, what, 2 more weeks? What I would like to suggest is that we commit right here, right now, to stay in the board meeting until we get a decision at the next board meeting.
Well,
That we
can
work-
I interrupt you? You're only going to get a draft at the next board meeting.
Well, I know, okay, but can you not, you can't vote on it because you have to have a public hearing anyway.
You do.
So, I mean, but there could be some general idea, but I understand, it's a struggle. I mean, Ms. Anderson makes a good point. I just feel, well, I'm just going to say what I feel. I feel that the African-American community, I don't know, it's just, I don't know how to say it, so I won't, but you get, it's just, it just, I don't know. I don't know what to say. It's more of a personal thing than anything. But at the end of the day, let me just say that regardless of this, we as a board have got to be willing to work together, knowing we're not all going to get what we want. But if some other ideas are out there that we could make a real difference, we need to at least try to work together. In the meeting we had at South Granville, we clearly were not working together. I mean, it was kind of all over the place, and that's nobody's fault, but we just kind of sit there and look at each other and don't, why do you think this or whatever. That's not the best way to make a decision, and I go back to what Ms. Williams said. The ramifications of this are huge. And if you look at the census data and what's happened in the southern part of the county the last 10 years versus the northern part, it's shocking. It's unbelievable what's happening. So, point I'm making is this. Let's try to do the best we can. Let's put out some great ideas. Let's do our homework. Let's come up with, maybe share with one another before the meeting. We just got to get on with this, but we cannot make the mistake just to get on with it. We need to do something, and we've got some ideas. Some of us have talked, and, it's an idea, but it may not be the best, but we just got to work together, be it the Tar River study, whatever it is. We've got to come up with a solution that we all can leave and say, I feel pretty good that we did the best we can.
All right. Does anyone want to make a motion at this point? Ms. Anderson, are you willing to make a motion, or is this just general discussion?
At this point, having listened to my comrades around the table, haven't heard from all of them, but, you know, from what I understand, part of the study has already been accomplished. Is that correct, Dr. Granville?
So the architectural part is
The
done.
architectural
It has
part,
been presented to you already.
yes.
The
yes.
staff are working on the other part.
The other portion of it. So at this point, let's let that go through. That's what I would just let it go through so we don't have to come back and say, we never did get a chance to. Let it go through, but as you just said, Dr. Houlihan, we got to get on with it. So I relinquish that. Chair.
All right. Any further discussion around consolidation? We left a kind of open-ended there for you. Ms. LeBrecq?
Yeah, so I kind of want to throw something out there, really more for some thoughts and feedback from everybody. But after running numbers and kind of going through what does a K-5 situation look like, what do the K-6 numbers look like, because I know that involved some discussion last time, what does it look like throughout the entire county versus just the southern end. It was interesting to me, first of all, if we leave the elementary schools K-5, and we were to close Wilton and Creedmoor, that would put our capacity for the three largest elementary schools at 1,872. All right, and that's the available capacity. And we have a total of 1,768 elementary school students. So that doesn't give us much room for growth, and that doesn't really do anything for our middle school students, right? Because Butner STEM, out of the 547 students at GC Hawley Middle School, only 223 of those would be able to fit at Butner STEM Middle in the current middle school scenario. Okay. So what I did was I looked at K-6, and based on K-6, I have it broken down by school, basically how much availability would be left. The interesting thing to note that if we did K-6 throughout the southern end, but it would also be feasible to do it throughout the entire county. The interesting thing to note is that Butner STEM Middle School would be able to house all of the 7th and 8th graders that currently go to Butner STEM Middle and to GC Hawley Middle School. Not that I want, because I live in that southeastern tip of the county, I would not want all of those kids to have to go all the way over to Butner STEM Middle. But what I do feel that does pose as a potential option is if we were to make Mount Energy a leadership academy of K-8. And so what that would do is that would alleviate about 136 students would be able to go to Mount Energy Elementary School for 7th and 8th. And then Butner STEM would be able to have additional room for growth as well. So my thought would be to move the Leadership Academy at Wilton to Mount Energy and make that a K-8 Leadership Academy. And then all of the elementary, hang on a second, that's K-6. So, yeah, so Butner STEM would still have 172 available capacity. And then as far as the elementary schools, we would still have about 320 available spaces for elementary school students. So
you're closing Wilton,
not, well,
well, you're relocating Wilton students
yes,
to Mount Energy, but closing the building.
yes.
Is that the only building?
Well, and Holly would be,
Okay.
yeah. So those two, yes.
we'd still have to renovate for the bathrooms and science and.
But we would
labs.
not have to do an entire building. So there would be some renovation, but because it's K-8, we would still have K-6, which wouldn't need a renovation. It would just be maybe like a portion of the building would need to be
Well, that's the
updated.
situation at Tar River too.
No.
No?
No, you want to, if Tar River were to be a middle school, the entire middle school would need to be renovated. If you were to
Well,
renovate.
some of the classrooms where the fifth grades are probably would be okay. I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm not
I
an
mean,
architect.
yeah, no, I know. But I was just, yeah, no, and yeah, I'm not to, it's not to say that Mount Energy wouldn't require some update, upgrades or whatever.
That's
but-
something I feel like is a staff qualifying thing that we would need to get their input on. So that being said, that dirty little 5-letter word, are you asking the staff to study that? Because this is where I'm going with that is,
Right.
if,
We need to know how much that would be.
well, I mean, it sounds like there are several different pieces to that. And again, if you're saying, no, let's wait, so then we're waiting until October for Tar River to be done, us do a public hearing, whatever, then do we set out again a whole nother scenario that we're gonna have to study? I'm just trying to get the gauge of interest of is, we need some hard numbers on that, but if that's something you're wanting to pursue.
We don't even know if that's an issue. I mean, if we're gonna have 130 whatever kids at that level, I would think, I mean, if you go through Tar River, you find that there are halls where nothing needs to be done. Some of them, everything needs to be done, but there are halls over there with bathrooms that are not, not the issue, and I think that was pointed out in the study. Maybe that's something that we could look into just briefly before we finalize the decision.
Okay, I'm just saying,
I'm just,
if we're not, I just see that being pushed further down the road if.
No, the
we-
last thing I want to do is push anything further down the road.
And maybe I'm incorrect by that, but I feel like we're asking questions that we're not qualified to make the answers to.
Well, I suspect everything we do with this there's going to be questions that we're all not able to.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying is, do we have them look at this stuff at one time versus two and three and 4 times?
Mr. Richardson,
Yes, ma'am.
could I just interject that I would be interested in looking at the study at Tar River, how it would be housing 7th and 8th grade and how it would be housing 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, if that could be compare and contrast that.
Okay.
Could she repeat that? I didn't.
Can you say that again?
I'd like to see how it would look with 7th and 8th grade only versus 6, 7, and 8.
At Tar River.
Yes. So we won't have to come back and say, well, what if we just had this grade removed and we just did 2 grades? Just do it up front, in the study, and we'll kind of know.
Okay, so essentially you're looking at 2 options like there were in the Granville Central study. All right, Dr. McLean, can we make that happen with that study?
First 2 weeks of school.
I know.
Mr. Chairman, I see you looking over here, so I'll respond.
Yeah, I don't know who to look at at this
I suppose
point.
that, any study can be done, it's just a matter of time, resources, shifting of positions that have just occurred.
Yeah,
So just would need a little more direction on that.
okay.
Are you talking about doing a formal study of the facility as to whether or not Mount Energy can handle?
No, she's not even talking about that. She's asked back on the Tar River study.
Oh, I see.
So I think her question is can it be done as a 6th through 8th grade middle school? And then can it be done as a 7th through 8th grade middle school? Is that what you're asking?
Pretty
But then
much.
they would have to go back and
Well,
look
if you do
at,
it for 6 through 8, you'll pretty well be able to tell by taking a grade level out.
but if you do the 7th and 8th, then you're putting 6 at elementary schools? Is that what your question is?
Yeah, I'm just saying, we hadn't really gotten to that. Maybe just keep it 6, 7, and 8, and then if we make a decision later on the other, we would adjust it, I guess.
Okay.
Well,
So,
Mr. Chairman,
Especially since we're pressed for
the
time.
the only thing that have to be changed at Tar River really would be the, I guess it's pre-K or K through first or second grade. There's like a hall with 10 classrooms on it that have the little bitty bathrooms and vanities and stuff in. The rest of the school can accommodate a 6th grader or a 7th grader or 8th grader, as far as that go. So when you're talking about renovating, you're talking about one hall that has 10 rooms on it, that you gotta take out the little vanities and make a couple of regular bathrooms on that hall. So that's why I was talking about, I don't see no $4 million to do that. Maybe 2 if, in today's prices. But,
well, the other 2 was athletic fields.
yeah, but I was talking about using the ones at Hawley until funding was available. There's land there, you just gotta be able to, change it from flat lands to football and baseballs and field soccer, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But that doesn't have to happen for the students to be there,
Okay.
because the land's right on the other side where the gym is, on that road frontage.
Yes, sir. All right. So, Ms. Anderson, if I understand you correctly, leave the study the way it is? 6th through, or, I'm sorry, Ms. Williams?
Yeah, just leave it that way.
Okay. Staff, so stay the course where you're at. Okay. And did we determine anything about the Mount Energy? Are we holding off on that, or? Ms. Lebrec?
At least, could this proposal, just be.
Dr. Houlihan, can you use your mic there?
If this proposal, as a concept, there may be well, everything we do, there's going to be, things that have to be followed up with, but I think what she's trying to get at is to have that framework of what could happen with the schools in terms of elementary, in terms of the leadership academy, in terms of which schools will be affected in terms of being empty or so on, I'm using that carefully, that kind of thing. Is that kind of concept something that we can work through, that we can agree on? Or is it something that the majority of you don't want to spend any time on? Because if you don't, we don't need to go down that road.
Okay. What's the feeling of the board?
We have a hard time getting people to respond. I don't want to go down that road.
Yeah.
All right.
We tend to, when we're getting, I'm not saying getting close, but then we do get another scenario thrown in there, which takes us down another road. And so I'm like Mr. Peace, I don't want to go down that road.
So what are the scenarios that we're talking about at this point?
My comrade, Amanda Lebrecht, started mentioning, and let me know if I wrote some notes down incorrectly, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, possibly 7th and 8th grade, and she broke out the things between Mount Energy and the number of students, 7th, 8th grade. Then she talked about Butler STEM, capacity 172, 760 students at Hawley. I was taking these notes here. So down that road, what I just mentioned here, down that road. I mean, you know,
You mean
we
you're-
can do a lot of studies. If we want to start looking at breaking these up as we break up the schools, right? That's the way that she's talking about, breaking these up and breaking up the grades as break up the schools. Okay, so that's a different concept. You know, it's, again, we can do this for another year or two.
Mr. Richardson?
Yes, ma'am.
I may be thinking about this incorrectly, but I see if we can get the Holly situation resolved, I don't think that necessarily precludes us looking at the future for an academy or something special that we think would help our students. I don't think it precludes that.
Okay.
That's just me. I think you can look at both, but maybe at
Well,
a
but-
little bit different time.
This sounds like it's part of the Holly thing.
Well,
That's her,
Oh, okay.
that's her answer for Holly. So that's kind of where I'm at is
Right.
we keep coming up with more and more answers, but we're not making any decisions.
So what do we, just be very specific. We meet next week. What is it that we're going to be?
So we don't meet next week.
I'm just-
September 12th. We will
When
get
we
the,
meet.
we get the draft of the Tar River study to go along with the architectural study we've already received.
Correct.
At that point, any edits or changes you want made to that, the staff will go back. Typically, what has happened is you schedule a public hearing where you will get that report, you will hear from the public, and then typically, we have not made decisions at public hearings. Generally, the next scheduled regular board meeting, the thought would be, is we entertain motions, which is what we did at South Granville. We didn't have a motion to pass on actually what would happen with consolidation.
So if Ms. Anderson, and I may misunderstand, I was going to say Miss Anderson, whatever. So the proposals that are on the table are to move Hawley to Granville Central and close Granville Central.
So, no, so you've got a closure of Granville Central, and there were two parts to that. You would either move Hawley there, or you would move South Granville there and Hawley to South Granville. Now, when that was originally brought up at South Granville, it failed to combine the two high schools and move Hawley to South Granville. But that's still on the table. You also have two elementary closure studies that are on the table as well. You've added a third one that will come in September. So you've got 4 school closure studies currently active. And at least 2 of them revolve around Hawley. That's the Tar River and the Granville Central one.
In South Granville.
Well, it's all within that Granville Central study.
And so what we're saying is those are our choices?
I mean, those are the studies you have. No, you can come up with whatever you want, but again, it's like she's saying, you're going down a road. And with Ms. LeBrec's option today, I think you're not closing anything new, but you are asking to reconfigure something that we need some statistical data on.
Like what?
Like, can those numbers fit where her rough calculations are? Are there any modifications to Mount Energy that needs to happen? If you're moving middle schoolers there, how do they get their electives? How do they get athletics? Those are scenarios we need to think through. Those unintended consequences you had talked about early on, we need to think through those.
Don't we need to think through, if we send the kids to Granville Central, how that's going to happen?
Well, yeah, I
or
mean,
at
that,
South Granville.
yeah. But that's been part of the study. That kind of stuff's been figured into those studies we've received. We've not received a study around this topic. This is something, again, new.
Well, Mr. Chairman, this board has thus far made 3 motions,
Yes, sir.
and 2 of them failed.
Yes, sir.
Are we going to rehash all of those motions, or what?
Is, to be honest, that's the typical way we work around here, but
Well, can we deviate from the typical
I
way we've
would
been
love
working?
to. I would really love to.
You the man, you can make it happen.
Well,
I
been
mean,
trying.
I'm just gonna put it out there. I'm a little frustrated because I feel like we get into this 4-3 position and then there's a particular member that just kind of, all of a sudden it's like, oh, but let's throw Tar River back in there. And then all of a sudden we're back to where we were before just because that's what he wants. And it's like, I find it very frustrating. You know, publicly saying, well, I'm not gonna vote for the other options is like, I mean, intentionally stonewalling us.
How do we get out of this mess where we cannot agree on a, you know, because some of us, it's
Can
4
you
to 3.
talk to your mic there?
Excuse me. It's 4, how do we get out of this? If we cannot put something together that we can agree on, then we're not going to go anywhere. It's clear that right now, the options that are on the table are not acceptable. So that should tell us, all right, let's go and look at something, let's figure out something else. You may feel like it's going down a rabbit hole, but I don't see that we have any choice. I mean, to get it done right is what's so important. I mean, it just feels like we got this one and nobody can agree, so we just keep doing it.
Or-
Because we got to get it done.
Not
and-
only that, but I feel like it's like you throw some ideas out there and it's like, well, this is why that can't happen. This is why that can't happen. This is why that can't happen. Instead of telling me everything that why it can't happen, why can't you tell me what we can modify to make it happen? Anybody.
Well, that's absolutely. We've got to do something.
Well, we have studied, we have brought facilitators in, we have done small group work. I'm out of tricks, so,
Well, the answer then is to let us bring something forward for you all to look at. If you don't like it, fine. But if it's something that will get us off where we are, it's worth looking at. And I think Amanda is right, Ms. LeBrecq is right. It seems like anything that is brought up that doesn't fit into the parameters that have failed, there's something wrong with it. It's always about what won't work, she has sat down and worked through those numbers unbelievably. And to just throw that away because we're not interested I just think we're not going to get anywhere.
I don't know that anybody's telling you to throw it away. I think the question is, are we going to move forward studying that? Because we can't sit around here and make a decision without the facts.
So Chair, what you're saying is what she brought to the table will require further studies.
I would think it would at least need
Yes,
a
it
report
would
on
have to be.
capacity and.
Yes. And you know, I agree,
facilities.
and I agree with you. I really think some of the recommendations that she made, or to look at with the studies, definitely might be something that can be looked at, but you might have to go ahead and make a move and make a decision, then look at these. You know what I'm saying? We're saying, let's do this now. We know we need a study. Let's hold off till we do a study. But even with the consolidation or 6th, 7th, 8th graders, or the way that she's breaking this out, it doesn't mean that it's not good at all. You know, because we could still make those different changes in the schools at whatever point, but right now we're just trying to make a decision on what we're going to do with this, you know, where we're going to go with the consolidation. And 6th, 7th, unless you're saying, okay, we can't do this until we do that study and see if it's going to be feasible, you know, with Mount Energy, and she mentioned Holly students and Butner STEM, you know, all of those, and also relocation of Wilton as well, so.
There's really, I mean, really the only thing that's hasn't been studied in this is it possible to make Mount Energy a K-8, and what does that entail? Like, what would need to be modified at Mount Energy? Because I can tell you right now, as far as the numbers of the students and where they, like, I've worked the math out on the kids. Like, that's not the issue. The issue is what modifications need to be made so that 7 and 8 can go there as well.
Okay. So what's the pleasure of the board?
I have a question.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Could you run it by me one more time about, are you talking about all the 7th and 8th graders that would be going to Holly?
No.
Which ones?
No. So, okay. And I actually sent this to everybody, like, just a screenshot of my notebook
Yeah,
in your
I
email.
just got it.
Okay.
I haven't had a chance to look at it.
So this particular talks about if we were to make all of the elementary schools K-6, okay? And in doing that, then the new 7-8 capacity at Butner STEM Middle School would be 319 students approximately, all right? And then minus the availability of 722 optimal capacity would leave us with 403 available spaces, right?
Gotcha.
So then if you look at GC Holly Middle School and the 547 kids that currently go there, taking away the 6th grade, that leaves that with 367, which actually fits all into Butner STEM Middle School. However, I did say that from a location standpoint, and living where I live especially, you know, having to go quite that far is a lot. So then, looking at Mount Energy as a K-6, that has left 236 available spaces, which you could make 136 of those 7th and 8th. Does that make sense? So you're basically, the kids that would be at Mount Energy, if you were to move Wilton there, eventually what would happen is we would have 18 available spaces left at Mount Energy if we made Mount Energy a Wilton, like the Leadership Academy K-8.
Did you say that would involve closing 2 elementary schools?
Just one.
Just one? Okay.
Yes. When I talked about closing 2 elementary schools, that was in reference to K-5.
Okay.
The only way that we'd be able to close 2 elementary schools would be to remain under the K-5, and it would have to be Wilton and Creedmoor, because if you did any other combination, then we don't have enough capacity for the rest of the kids, for all of the kids. So we would have to leave open the 3 largest elementary schools if we were going to remain with K-5. So it would have to be Tar River would remain open, Butner STEM Elementary, and what's the last one? Mount Energy.
All right. Any points of action, or you just want to think about that?
I mean, I would like to make a motion that we see if Mount Energy is, like, what would it take to make Mount Energy a K-8 from a structural standpoint? Which is, not that I want to put more on the staff. I feel really bad about that.
Are you asking what specific changes, or what specific changes and what they would cost?
What specific changes at
Okay.
this point in time?
Gotcha.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. A motion, hold on one second, let me finish writing. So Ms. LeBrecq made the motion to have staff take a look at what it would take to make Mount Energy hold 7th and 8th grade,
Add 7th and 8th, yes.
as 7th and 8th. Structural, just facility-wise.
Correct.
Okay, we have a second by Dr. Houlihan. Is there any discussion?
So in reality, we're asking for another study.
It doesn't sound like a full study because there are other pieces that would need to be addressed. This is just looking at facility.
Looking at facility.
This is Eva. I think I agree. It wouldn't be the same sort of study that you do for a closure because the closure of this proposal would be Wilton, which has already been studied and heard. So it's a proposal about relocating the program from Wilton as I understand it, and relocating middle school students from Holly, which you also have already studied.
Okay?
Did I understand that right, Ms. Philbrook?
Yes, thank you, Eva.
Okay. Any other discussion, questions?
I just want to ask the question, going back through your information, you did say, I was breaking out your numbers again, that Mount Energy can in fact hold all the 7th and 8th grade students from Holly.
No, I did not say
Oh,
that.
you
No,
didn't.
I said that they would have to be split.
Okay,
I said Mount Energy would hold about 136 7th and 8th graders.
okay, but I just thought I heard Ms. Eva say. I thought
Well,
she-
Mount Energy, right, we're doing, it would be a structural study to see what would need to be modified
In the building.
in the building.
So you're not even touching student capacity numbers, teachers, any of
No,
that?
no, right.
Just
Just the building,
to put them physically in the building?
right.
Okay. Staff, does, Mr. Graham, rest of you, does that make sense? Okay?
Mr. Chairman, I would just ask for a point of clarification. So this is not involving an architect, so there would not be any monetary estimates about these revisions given?
Correct.
No, sir.
Correct.
Just, so it's just straight up capacity?
Yes.
Simple as
What
that.
about HR ramifications for licensure and that type of thing?
She's saying no, not at this time. Am I correct about that? Because that's where you get into teachers and licensure and,
Yeah, the programs of study and the types of classrooms, all that?
Well, all I would say to this is
Can you-
the concept something that we can agree on?
well,
It may not work out the way we want it to, but if we're not, I mean, can we say, hey, it's a good idea to go to K-6? Hey, it's a good idea to try to do X, Y, and Z with the middle school kids. It may not work out perfectly, but we've got to do something that makes a difference. And we're not there yet, and we just stuck. I mean, it's really like everything that's said, there's a problem, you do this, you do this, do this. We could kill everything.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, I don't know what I don't know. So I don't know about licensure and all of that kind of, like, what is that? And I don't know.
well, that came up in our conversation a couple meetings ago when we looked at the K-6 model in the 7th through 12th grade.
Right.
Your licensure changes over for middle school and elementary, the upper grades and all of those. So that potentially could be an issue. And then your elective courses. Because that's what the staff brought up at our meeting when we asked that last time.
Okay.
Yeah, well, now, once again, death by 1,000 cuts.
Well, I'm not understanding what the problem there is.
The problem, Mr. Richardson, is, well, no, I'm not going to go there because we're professional. I'm not going to go there.
Mr. Richardson, as you can tell, I sort of have a little bit of a bias. I like the Tar River thing, but I have no problem at all with us at least getting the, what would it take if we wanted to embrace that concept.
But I think that's where the staff is asking, do
Right.
you want just a building study
Yeah.
like you're asking for?
Right.
Or do we want the unintended consequences of what that looks like HR and programmatically? So that when they come back and give us the report, it's not a, yes, you can do it by the building, well, then we go back and wait for an HR report, then we go
Oh, I
back
see.
and wait for the
So
finance
we just
report.
don't.
So
do
what
anything.
what I'm not
No,
asking, well, no,
what
what
I'm
I'm not,
saying is, do you want them all to, do you want them to look at the whole picture or just a part of it?
I want us to make a decision.
Well, I'm there with you.
so what I'm saying is we don't need to do like an architectural study like we did with Tar River, where we're like having a personal, like an actual architect come in and we have to pay them and all that kind of stuff. I don't know what else specifically is needed to, I mean, you're saying licensure and all that stuff. And yeah, I guess I am then asking.
And I'm taking that from what a previous meeting we had, that was the
Right.
conversation.
And so then I guess I am then asking for that sort of information. Like, I just want to know what will it take to, like, what does it take to make that happen? But not necessarily saying having an architect show up and do like, you know, sketches and all the things like Tar River.
Okay.
If I may, I think my understanding of the initial motion was what changes would need to be made to the building, similar to what you had with Tar River, where they said you need the toilets to be changed out and whatever, without getting a price tag, but looking at, you know, what physical changes. And then, so that was, to answer Dr. Winborn's question about, what are you asking for? That was my initial understanding. And so, that was the motion that's on the table. And so now the question on the table is, do we add to that motion other considerations that staff thinks we need to know about as we are looking at this idea? And you could leave it to the staff to tell you, look, yes, we would have to do this to the building, but it would be difficult to get the correct teachers, or, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so I guess then that would be worth knowing.
Say that again.
Yeah, so that would be worth knowing what Eva said.
So you're giving the staff the flexibility to speak to other issues they need to look at.
Yes.
Is that clear, Dr. Winborn? Clearer? Okay. All right, so the motion would be is, what would it take to make Mount Energy a K through 8, moving the leadership program from Wilton over there? Specifically looking at the facility, but allowing the staff to speak into other things that they might need to look at. Dr. Houlihan, are you good with seconding that revised motion?
Sure.
All right, any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
All right. So that passes. Anything else with consolidation?
One of the things I would bring up is, we all received this afternoon or this morning an email from Dr. Winborn from a teacher with a proposed way of working with the high schools. That is something that I think is really worth looking at in terms of, as we make these changes, what are some things we can do to draw kids into our schools that actually may be very cost efficient. So I just want to encourage you to take a look at that and see what you think. I'm sure there'll be 101 reasons why we probably will need to look twice at it, but look at it, because to me that is a possible way of making a board decision that would be something that maybe we all could figure out a way to look at carefully, which would not take any studies, but just look at what he's come up with. Not exactly that, but he's talking about consolidating vocational or CTE, but what about a school where we can have AP courses that we currently cannot offer the individual schools? And that school is centrally located so that the kids at Webb who want to do that, the kids at South Granville who want to do that, it's a different concept, how you get them there and this, that, and the other, but AP courses, there's the teacher at Granville Central that does this technology crazy stuff. I mean, so many neat things that we could do that currently we can't do, including the performing arts. There are some things that we could be doing, but we don't do it now because there's just not the numbers. So, I mean, all I'm saying to you is as we move forward, whatever we do, this is something that I think is worth looking at. I won't make a motion or anything, but, you know, maybe we can talk about it when we get back together at our next meeting.
Okay. Anything else?
I didn't get that particular email, so if somebody will
Here's
forward
some
it to me.
copies right here if you want it,
Okay, great.
Okay.
somewhere.
All right.
How convenient, there you go.
Anything else around consolidation? All right. So we will get that draft for Tar River at our next regular board meeting. Dr. McLean, we omitted the beginning of talking about adding the impact statement. Are we going to talk about that tonight? About whether we want to do it individual or separate impact statement? We didn't add that to the agenda. Can we still add it? Okay. Eva, we have a technical question for you. We did not add at the beginning of the meeting to talk about the impact statement. Can we add that to the agenda at this point?
Yes, if you could have a motion to amend the agenda.
Okay. Board members, you have received some information from the superintendent related to a charter school that will be applying for our county. And there was the need of discussion about an impact statement. And we failed to add that to the agenda at the beginning of the meeting. Would we have anybody entertain a motion to add that to the agenda now?
I'll make that motion, sir.
All right.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Peace and a second by Ms. LeBrecq to add our impact statement to the agenda. Is there any further discussion? All right. Seeing none, if you're ready to vote, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. Dr. McLean, can you give us some background?
Absolutely. Thank you, Board. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Late last week, I received a letter from the Department of Public Instruction, and the letter informed us that there had been an application made by the Acuity Public Schools, which is a charter school, attempting to open here in Oxford, North Carolina. They had a couple of signatures in support of their application, and this was an opportunity being provided to us for impact statements. So I sent this document to you to be shared if interested, and recommended that we consider discussing something we've done before, which is to either do one letter together under which everyone would sign as a board, or to have individual impact statements. Embedded in that letter from the Department of Public Instruction was a link to their application so that you may see what they're claiming to be able to do or interested in doing with children, and a link to more information about their group. I know I've had conversation with some of you, and we have found it most interesting. So I urge you to do that if you've not done that before responding, if you so choose. But I mentioned to our chair that I thought it was worth a conversation, particularly as it relates to how our board would like to respond.
All right, so board members, this comes to you as a possible action item. In the past, we have done a letter jointly as a board and sent that on. We could do individual ones, or we could do a combination of the two. We could do a resolution here today, and then we could individually send letters. So what would be the pleasure of the board? Ms. Williams?
I would like to say we do a resolution and then individual letters, because I
Okay.
think different people may have different avenues that they want to explore in the
Okay.
application.
All right. Are you making that in the form of a motion?
Yes, I make that as a motion.
second.
What is the resolution?
I believe that would be am I correct in opposing this particular charter?
That's what we have done. We've done a letter.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to understand, so that we can record in the minutes what the board, the motion is to express the board's opposition
Yes.
to the formation of this charter school, and to request that the chair and superintendent submit a letter on the board's behalf.
And
That
Attorney
sounds good.
Dubison, this time I even recommend that our board members
Sign it.
sign this particular document. I too plan to submit a letter in opposition.
Mm-hmm. And board members, I will note, and we discussed this with the last time we did this, as I guess the chair and the superintendent are putting together a letter, keep in mind that the fact that the charter school will take students from the public schools is not of concern to the charter board. That is
I couldn't hear.
the
her.
underlying purpose of charter schools. So we focused on other concerns about the programming, and specifics about the school's model.
The last one that we did, this joint one, was a private school looking to go charter. And so Eva's right, there was some programming things we put in there. So I think what she's saying is the opposition just can't be that we're going to lose students.
Because they
But
know that.
I believe there are many other factors we can include in that. So if I'm correct, the motion on the floor is to write a letter signed by the board expressing opposition to the formation of this charter school, signed by the entire board, and then board members may also send letters individually if they so desire to. Is that correct, Ms. Williams?
That's correct.
Ms. Anderson, did you second that?
Yes, I did.
All right, do we have any further discussion?
Real
Questions?
quick, is this a private, for-profit group?
I believe it's a nonprofit according to their application.
And are they from North Carolina?
Yes and no.
Yes and no? Okay.
So all charter schools have to be nonprofits, but they are allowed to hire a for-profit company to run the school. So when you see some of these other charter schools that are for profit, it's, you form a not-for-profit, but then you hire a charter management company.
Yeah.
And I did not read it fully enough to tell if that is what they are doing here.
Mr. Chair, it is important to know individuals who are interested in responding or supplying impact statements need to do so before August 31st. That is the deadline.
Okay. And so board, if you so approve this, we'll draft this letter and then we'll get with you sometime between now and the 31st, probably the 25th, we can have that ready.
Yes, and as we did the last time, we will get with Attorney Dubison to make certain our facts and details are accurate.
Okay, we'll do that and then we'll have you sign it at the 25th. All right, if you're ready to vote now, unless there's other questions, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, so the motion passes. We'll work on that statement, have it ready for you at the 25th. Dr. McLean, anything else from you?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Good evening once again, board members, and to our guests who are with us. Thank you for being with us this evening. We are excited because we are in the midst of planning for the opening of school. It is back to school for us. We are intending on servicing our students 5 days a week. So we are excited about youngsters getting to their open houses and getting to school to see what school is about this year. We're pleased with that. And we're thrilled. The first day of school is August 23rd, for those of you viewing with us. We also have for our board this evening a confirmed
I sent this to you for a save the date, but it is now confirmed. We will have a joint Board of Education and Commissioners meeting on Wednesday, August 25th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., and that will be here in our Mary Potter Gymnasium. The topic is redistricting, and I'm going to say good evening to our friends from the Board of Commissioners who are with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We certainly appreciate it. And finally, this evening, I would like to share that our technology team has been working. We have convocation for our faculty and staff this Thursday, but board members, you do not need to report to that. We caught you coming in because we're doing that virtually. We will be doing that virtually. So thank you for your comments, and we will be doing that virtually. So do plan to watch us. Our tech team is working hard. We will be getting link information to you. And the last thing is that our USDA, Dr. Houlihan, you hit on this, and I'm so glad you did. Our USDA, remember that grant we received earlier? It's exactly what they're going to allow us to do. Sharing of resources, sharing of courses. This is our new professional development center, and we can satellite out all across our district once we get everything in place. So this is year 2 of that grant. COVID held some things up, but our tech team has been working really hard to get that equipment in. Those things are being installed now, and we will be able to show things, work with students, teach from one location, and pilot out. So we're thrilled about that with PD all across the district as well. So lots of new things coming this year. Another new thing coming this year you will be hearing more about is our 5-star virtual academy, which is right here, as well as our evening program. We're thrilled about that. More to come. We're calling that our Cadence Academy. Sometimes students do march to the beat of their own drum. Stay tuned. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair.
I really like that name for that. Good job. Board members, you see the other dates there at the end of your agenda, just to remind you of a few of those things. Again, don't forget our September board meeting, which is our next regular board meeting, is moved back a couple weeks because of the Labor Day holiday. There will be no work session in September at this point unless you schedule one. So September 13th is when we'll be back together here at Mary Potter. Board members, anything else from you? Oh, Dr. McClain?
I'm so sorry, board members. You're going to receive an email from me or Ms. Henderson. As always, we will be trying to get into buildings the first 2 days of school. That's the 23rd and 24th. Please join us if your schedule will permit. We are trying to visit schools those 2 days. Feel free. We'll get a schedule out just so we all don't end up in the same place. So do look for that email.
Okay, thank you. All right. With nothing else, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
I have a motion by Dr. McKnight, a second by Ms. LeBrecq. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, if you're ready to vote, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. We are adjourned at 6:18. Have a good evening, and thank you for